Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Steven Haggerty. Today I'm joined by the founder of KAMG, Mr. Kas Andz. How you doing, Kaz?
I am happy, I'm healthy, and I'm inspired to knock this out of the park with you. It's always a good start,
What
right?
a strong opening. What a strong opening. And that wasn't even scripted, so thank you for that. But glad to have you on the show. Glad you're here. Let's jump straight into this and let's just give everyone an overview of what KAMG does.
Absolutely. So, whether you sell windows, dildos, or fireplaces, we are the one-stop shop for digital marketing, essentially. We primarily focus on e-com. I can give you the whole spiel of, SEO, PPC, but everybody says that. So let's get straight to the point. We attract customers to your store, to your website, wherever it may be. We engage them and convert them on your website. So whether it means a little cheeky offer, an extra free shipping delivery piece, whatever it may be. And then we get them to keep coming back and back and back. Just like those really annoying exes, they just keep messaging you out of
Just keep
nowhere.
coming back.
Exactly.
I mean, the e-commerce world, let's face it, has absolutely exploded in the past couple of years. But
Mm.
let's rewind in the sense of what was going on in your world when you thought, right, it's time to start this agency. It's time to help these e-commerce people make more money,
More dosh, as they like
more
to say.
dollar.
So, what was in my head? Well, I guess this whole journey in terms of e-commerce started when I used to work in an e-com corporation. I say e-com, they're both local, but focus a lot more on e-com in more recent years.
Hmm.
So that was Cakebox. At the time, they still are Cakebox. And they're one of the fastest growing companies in the UK at the moment. So they opened between 3 to 5 stores on average the last couple of years. Just absolutely smashing it in that sense.
People love
Um,
cake,
they do. They're like the
so
McDonald's of cake, I like to say, right? And they are. They've got a really good franchise model. It's all going quite well for them. So I originally joined them when I was 19, and even the way I got the job was just really wacky. The guy never read my CV. I just bumped into him at a wedding, and he said, "We need a graphic designer." I was like, "Cool, I'm game." Because at the time I was just working in a factory, and I was doing the whole typical Gary V kind of bit where you do your work, but I spent the whole day listening to just podcasts, studying
yeah,
my ass
yeah.
off for like 16 out 18 hours a day. I feel like everybody starts with Gary Vee one way or another. Do you know what I mean?
Either you love him or hate him. I've gone through
Mm.
both with him, so I loved him, then I hated him. I kind of like him now.
Mm.
So we'll see what the future holds for my relationship with old Mr. V.
Brilliant. And yeah, so dude, I worked in a factory. We did aerospace engineering stuff like that. Nothing interesting to me anyway.
Honestly, you
That's
said factory, and I immediately went to biscuit factory. So aerospace engineering, I'm impressed.
Thank you. Was not for me, cutting metal and stuff. But yeah, dude. So I was working there for quite a while. I'm actually a full-time dropout, so that was my fourth time dropping out. I was doing an
You're
apprenticeship in
you're
that area.
officially an entrepreneur then because you're now unemployable.
Yeah,
That's
I've got
that's the
every.
that's the criteria of being an entrepreneur. You can't be employed.
It's quite true. You don't have any alternative, right? You kind of just have to go for the
Yeah.
kill, or
Even
say your
what I
prayers.
often find is any entrepreneur that goes for a job, whether they've done a business or not, the moment they're in that job, they're doing exactly what you did, and they're listening to podcasts, they're listening to like Gary Vee and all this stuff.
Mm,
That itch immediately comes back in full force the moment you get like that first pay slip from a company that you don't own,
mm.
and
Especially when you
it's
see
great motivation.
taxes and
Yeah, yeah. And you're just
that's a
thinking, oh
whole lot of
yeah, not
podcast.
yeah. That's an old. I should get my accountant on and just have a podcast about taxes.
I'd actually listen to that. Probably swap my bad porn habits for that. It is what it
Yeah,
is.
listen, it's a journey, man. It's a journey. You're on the road to recovery. That's all that counts. So you were working in the factory. You were doing some like intense personal development through podcasts and all that kind of stuff. Uh, and then you went to Cakebox, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you're at Cakebox and you were obviously seeing that these guys are smashing the e-commerce space, they're smashing the franchise market as well. At what point did you go, this is the thing that I need to be focused on? This is that next thing for me.
It's a really good question. So it was more. It started with a pain more than anything. It was the pain of, hey, it's not my company. I could see clear as daylight as to what these guys needed to do to 10x their sales. but they, of course, naturally, they're older gentlemen, so they're very traditional in their ways. They were happy to spend, like, obviously NDAs, can't say numbers, but let's just say six figures on TV ads and stuff like that, but wouldn't spend more than £200-300 on a Facebook ad.
Yeah, so proper traditional marketing.
Exactly. And I felt like that hurt me more than motivated me, in terms of seeing, hey, this is what you could be doing, but you don't want to kind of go in this journey. They've obviously switched it a little bit now that I left. Probably left a bit of a sour taste in their mouth, because I said, let's do this, and then they said no, and I was like, bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, with all of that kind of pain, essentially came the motivation of, I kind of want to go a little bit further. And there was a lot of personal itch, as you rightly said earlier, right? Like, I spent the first few years of my life, especially dropping out, very depressed, suicidal at one point. And I think the worst day of my life led me to one simple decision, which was, and anybody who's ever been depressed will definitely kind of vibe with this, which is, you don't feel like you're worth anything. You feel hollow and empty, but more importantly, every day is exactly the same. It's like you wake up, you brush your teeth, you have breakfast.
Yeah, you're in the Truman Show.
Exactly. And that in itself is a massive depression, that cycle, if you will. And that led me to a point of thinking, well, there's actually no point to even having my next breath if I don't aim for something that does excite me, that in this sense is for the top, right? Very ego kind of centric, almost look in a way. And most successes do tend to originate from ego, like even Mike Tyson, he said it himself. So that personal itch was always around. And when I was in the corporate world, with all the limitations that came with that, as successful as they were, it just didn't scratch that itch for me. So I thought, okay, well, what's next? And it was at a very good time that, because I was so deep into self-development, I had no friends. I was a loner, right? It's
something that no one tells you about self-development, is that you will lose or drift away from a lot of your friends.
I feel like the biggest thing about entrepreneurship or any level of self-development is loneliness.
Yeah. It's a topic that's come up so many times, and it's like, I think it's spoken about more now in terms of like the loneliness of being a founder entrepreneur, but it's still that fact that no matter how many networking events or how many friends you have around you, that whatever you're doing, your project, your baby, people don't understand it, right? Even if they've gone through they don't get it. There was actually this guy on LinkedIn, sort of super off tangent here, but he did this video about how that everyone from the outside thinks that he's got like loads of friends. He's always at like social events, at award ceremonies, networking events. And he did this video where he was lonely. He didn't actually have any friends, and he couldn't remember the last time he had a conversation that wasn't about his business or wasn't about finding something out about someone else's business. And that video completely blew up, because every comment was just like, yeah, I get this, I'm relatable. And it's something that no one goes through more than us, when we're in our position. But another trait of an entrepreneur, I firmly believe, is that we're like our own worst enemy, right? We will know all this. This is all public knowledge of this is the entrepreneurial life. And we're still like, yep, let's do it. Let's throw ourselves into it. Let's put ourselves in that position. We're just funny people. We're just nuts, basically.
Nuts is an understatement. It's weird because it kind of skews your dating life as well, right? With you being aware that you don't think in like necessarily a better way without being egotistical. You just think differently.
Yeah.
You just it's tough to kind of vibe with somebody when their thought process is around, what's for dinner, what new TV show did they see, and your thought process is around, how can I make this number bigger? How can I build an empire? How can I go 1, 2, 10 steps further?
Yeah.
And when you're in that mindset, that flow of thoughts that's always ongoing, it never really stops. It's like a hunger, like a thirst. I don't know. When it never stops.
No, I completely understand. I completely get it. I will have conversations with people that, and this is something that really frustrates me in terms of my own personality, because I shouldn't whatever think like this, but like I will speak to friends of mine who have done the normal life, let's put it that way, whatever we want to say. They've gone to uni, they're at that job, and they're perhaps not living. They're not at that stage where they're just getting home watching Netflix, but they're still like social and all that kind of stuff. But there's a couple people that are friends of mine, and they're like ridiculously talented. Like they've got so much talent in them, whether that's sort of just smart and sort of data driven and the way they look at things, or actually like old school talent in terms of crafting and all that kind of stuff. So when I talk to them about what they're up to and their passion, immediately in my head I'm just like, yeah, I can make a business out of that. Yeah. All they would have to do is this, and this, and they can make money from that. But then I forget that actually some people just like having passions and just like doing things because it's fun. And it's something that I always struggle with most for myself as well. It's like that classic shiny object syndrome, because especially where you're sat, you know, with the e-commerce world, e-commerce, like I said, it is so popular at the moment. So you must be very strong, to put it this way, to not be like, oh, why don't we just set up our own brand doing what they're doing and we can dominate that.
God.
You know,
that is a thought I have every single day, and in a way I am doing that, just in a calculated way, if you will. So that is very much the intention of having our own brands. Like the whole mission, if you're behind this agency, is not to make the best agency in the world. It's to make the best results possible as an agency in the world, but it's not to have the most or the biggest clients. It's to make a marketing machine. I don't know, you could call it many things, right? Marketing steroids.
Yeah.
And then whatever your next venture is, primarily going to be e-commerce, you essentially point that machine at that particular project, whatever it may be. If it's your mum's thing or it's like a little side project, hey, I want to, you know, sell dildos, for example, it'll blow up.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of this, is to build something that can be the fuel to the empire. Because it's everything in this world is driven by marketing. And you're spot on in the sense that, yeah, every day I feel like I want to do this and start my own store because of what we know, the numbers that we achieve, right? Like I'll give you an example. Obviously, again, NDAs, can't say too much, but we basically built 80% of the entire business model within 4 different tools of Shopify, HubSpot, whatever. And it's, again, I can't say much. And that took like 4 months to build it. It's literally like 300 plus automations looking at various conditions, 60 plus fields, very boring stuff to most people. Yeah. But when you look at that and you think, wow, I could literally just duplicate it and do it myself. And knowing that they're going to be $1 billion company minimum in the next few years, it's just mind blowing. So it's definitely a temptation. You're playing with fire, and the rule of thumb is don't get high off your own supply. Yeah. And to loop back to the very first thing I said of I'm trying to do it in the background. This is something that quite a few entrepreneurs, especially marketing, could definitely do. Obviously, you know, hey, I want to start my business, but B, I don't have time or money necessarily. Just get a site up, build it to rank like an absolute machine, like an info site. So let's say, again, we'll go back to dildos. Let's say you sold dildos. You build one page for every flavor dildo, every color dildo, every type of dildo, and
every possible tangent.
Exactly. Dinosaur dildos is something I discovered exists, which I don't even know why. But
I don't want to know why you were Googling or what you were searching to discover that, but you've discovered it, and let's just say your weekend is sorted.
Oh, my year is sorted.
your year. But that's also quite I guess, traditional way of doing it. You know, that's building a site that is dominated by SEO, so you're ranking higher, and you're getting that traffic in, and this is what I see a lot. Not so much on e-commerce sites, but sites where you see that they're highly ranked, they're getting the traction, but you must see this all the time. They're just leaving money on the table because they're not doing anything with that. They're not doing anything with the people hitting the site, or if they are selling something, they're selling one product to them rather than doing the upsells and the little offers and selling 3 or 4 products to them. So when you see a site, how do you not just email these guys and be like, guys, what are you doing? You need to be working with me. Or maybe you do. Maybe that's what you do.
So I hire a coach actually that helps me kind of keep me on track. He got me to quit my bad habits, get me up at 4 a.m. If you want to check him out, inspire-initiative.com. Little plug in there for you.
Nice little plug.
He's one of the people that actually forced me where every couple of weeks I'll build a list of like 10 companies I want to work with. Yeah. And then we do this little sniper strategy, which didn't used to be that common. A lot more people are doing it. HubSpot actually started doing it. You just record a 1-minute loom of going to the site saying I would change X, Y, Z, send it with a nice automated email. You know, you can pump out 10 of those in an hour easy. And because they're so personal, your meetings booked rate was going to be very high compared to most other pieces. To kind of loop back to that as well, of, hey, you know, I look at these sites and it makes me want to pull my eyes out, rip my eyes out. Is probably a better way of putting it. I'll give you something actionable that almost every e-com store can do today. So most e-com stores, what they do in terms of buttons, they have add to cart and they have buy now. The biggest downfall that I've noticed is that, and I've tested this myself, it definitely works across a few different stores, is when you have the word buy now, it suggests a psychological loss. Like the customer has to give something up, in this case, money,
Sure.
to get what they want. They're trading, it's
Yeah,
transactional, it's
makes
salesy.
sense. Makes sense.
If you switch the psychology to something they're gaining, e.g., get my dildo now, then you're gonna instantly flip the psychology of I'm gaining something if I click this
Mm-hmm.
button.
Mm-hmm.
You flip it from I have to transact to I get this thing. And that is a little easy 10-second change any e-commerce store can do today. Preferably not dildos, of course, but I mean, if you do it, kasands.com, boom,
There we
boom.
go.
That's the easiest thing I've noticed to change, just to boost a little conversion rate, if you will, across the board.
Yeah, and the thing where I see things is like those simple fixes always have the biggest results.
Mm,
Like because a lot of people's websites are working fine, right? They're working fine with the buy now feature, but it's that little tweak that can just grow their business to that next level that they didn't even think about. For you, obviously, like we've said a couple of times, e-commerce is booming at the moment. Marketing businesses in general are booming. It seems like every man and their dog is starting a marketing business. How do you make sure that you're staying relevant? How do you make sure that you're being heard through that noise, other than just being like, oh, we got sweet results?
yeah, absolutely. So you're spot on, and this is actually quite a bad thing in the marketing industry now, that every Billy Joe Bob does a 1K marketing course from some guru, and now they think they can start an agency.
John
Um,
Evans.
I'm not going to go into any names.
I didn't say the
Uh,
name.
Say no more. And yeah, with that, it's starting to create a very bad rap, which
Mm,
existed before, but it's worse now than ever. Where the whole guru thing is moving into the marketing space of now every guy and his dog, as you rightly said, is trying to start their own agency, and completely fine, right? Everybody's free to do so, but when you create more and more and more and more noise, where it's just substandard marketing that some guy just looked on Google for,
yeah, yeah.
it's very easy for most companies to get stung by a marketing company of promising XYZ, hey, we've got these results, we'll get you these results again. And then what you're left with is everybody hating the industry. The same way everybody hates gurus now, I don't think we're far off from most people
Mm-hmm.
hating marketing agencies, because of the fact that everybody's just trying to do it. It's a very big difference from just doing it to being an expert, right? It's like you've got footballers, you've got the Sunday League and you've got the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just too many people trying to join the Premier League at the same time that it's flooding the market, creating too much noise, as you rightly said. So the question then becomes, as you rightly said, I said that 4 times, we should start a drinking game around that. Um, I wish we were at the pub. So how do you kind of
Don't
stay
bring it up.
relevant? So there's different ways of staying relevant. The most obvious one, let's actually go to results first of all. How
Sure.
can you actually improve, the whole typical spiel of we've got results? Well, everybody has testimonials, and it's very easy for you to ask your mum, your cousin, and your dog's beard to record your testimonial. And it doesn't really become real because everybody's doing it on Zoom. It doesn't have that value, that weight.
Yeah.
So I found the
Like you said, it's
simplest.
been flooded so much that the value of it has decreased.
Exactly. And then you have to think, okay, well, how can I be different? How can I make my testimonials or case studies stand out more? So the biggest change that I found is to turn them into mini movies, but to make it so you actually go ahead and visit the client's office. You actually spend the day with them. You even do a strategy session with them and record it. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
don't give away what's on the whiteboard, but when you have that in-person experience and you've got it together, you're essentially you're face to face. It
Yeah,
it
yeah.
then becomes credible, it becomes
Well,
real.
it's a
It's not
story
just
then, isn't it? It's a storyline.
exactly. And then you go from, like, most case studies are boring as crap. It's like, here's a screenshot of Google Analytics, here's this,
Yeah,
here's that.
yeah.
But when you turn it into a mini movie where there's action shots of you, getting on the train, car, going up the skyscraper, whatever it may be, it creates a massive sense of engagement. So even with our YouTube analytics, we've seen that average viewer rate has gone up, like how many minutes of each video is being
Mm-hmm.
watched just when you change that little angle. So that's probably the first thing I would look at with anybody that's in any industry that revolves around case studies or testimonials. Go and meet the people in person. It's probably a bit different in B2C. I think B2C might even seem more fake. In B2B, I think is where you should really focus on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, then in terms of, okay, how do you really stand out from the noise? Well, the easy answer is PR and pattern interrupts. Those are the two main things. If you look at PR, like everybody can say, I'm on this website or that website, but you have to go for the big boys. So, for
Hmm.
example, you need to aim to be on Forbes, you need to be aim to be on BBC, and you only really get to that particular point if you have enough of a brand. So you have to focus on brand, which really mostly funnels down to two pieces. I'm going to waffle quite a bit here. Visual
Waffle, man.
language.
Waffle away.
I never respected brand until I paid a branding consultant to develop our brand.
Until that money
Um,
left your account, then you were like, oh, maybe I should be doing some branding
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it hurt a little bit, but
Yeah, it's worked. It's worked.
exactly. So brand is, yeah, visual language across the board. How do you visually translate what you're trying to tell your end consumer? Like having a picture of a nice office is not going to tell them anything.
Yeah.
But if you're for example, if you want to emphasize, hey, with PPC, you have to dive in. You need a picture of somebody skydiving. You have to visually tell a story as well as verbally, especially with things like Instagram changing the
Hmm.
way we see the world. So that's the first piece. And the second piece is content. You need to be uploading everything. And I'm not doing this I'm going to put my hand up or both hands up because it's that bad to this day. Um, but you need to make sure you hammer out content like no tomorrow. If you're struggling, just create an accountability group with one or two people where you both have to keep yourself there. And then you've got a show that you didn't even mean to create, right? And 1 hour recording becomes, 50 to 30, 10 to 60-second snippets, and
Yeah.
Bob's your uncle. You've got a month's worth of content. So those are the two big things for brand and PR. You definitely want to get a PR person involved. And then we go to pattern interrupts. How do you stand out? Well, the obvious answer is I'm sure nobody's ever going to forget the dildo comments we spoke about today. Pattern interrupts, right? You have to really go against the grain. Look what everybody else is doing and just do the opposite thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give
It's,
you
it's
obvious examples.
but that's really, sorry to interrupt, but interrupt. But like on yesterday's podcast, we spoke about creative bravery, and this is what you're kind of saying now, because I feel like so many people are afraid to do those pattern interrupts, are afraid to step out of that line that everyone else is following and sort of shout a little bit louder, do a little bit differently. But actually, if you look at any advertising that has ever worked in the history of man, the ones that you remember are those ones that interrupted something, like the gorilla playing the drums for the Cadbury's advert. One of the best adverts ever made. But that's because you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, it's a gorilla playing a drum set. You don't think, oh, it's a Cadbury advert. You do now because of the reaction. But it's things like what you're saying here. And I firmly believe that people should, entrepreneurs especially, should back themselves more and not be afraid of, getting it themselves out there and actually speaking about what they want to speak about rather than what everyone else is saying. Does that make sense?
It's very tough though, because
Oh yeah,
there's always a
100%.
backlash.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I'm sure just on this podcast alone, I've lost 10 potential clients just because of the amount of times I said the word dildo. And I'm okay
Or
with
you've
that.
gained another 10. Who knows? Depends on the audience.
Depends on how much they want to grow. A
That was low ball, man. That was awful. That was awful. I can't even cut this out. I do zero editing, so
Whoopsie
it's,
daisy.
yeah, no, it's good. But you're right though, because the backlash side of things. You mentioned YouTube, and I think if you want to look at any content creation, YouTube is the platform to look at that, because you've got creators on there that are creating daily content for their audience, right? But if you look at their journey on where they're at, so if you look at these people that have 10 plus million subscribers, yeah, which now isn't even that much, which is crazy. But if you look at those sort of people on that journey, they've had that backlash, but they've always, and this is the key I think for any entrepreneur, any business, they've always got back up. They've always thought, what, yeah, I've got that backlash, but I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to do what I'm doing. They may change it a little bit depending on how bad the backlash is, but they don't then automatically go, oh, I'm just going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm just going to bring back the cinnamon challenge or whatever trendy thing was like 7 years ago. And I think that's kind of what you're saying in terms of how you run your business. And I think it's so clear that you are someone that isn't different in that sense, but is someone that is brave enough to be like, hey, this is me and this is who I am. And that is super refreshing.
I get that. I think going on to the topic of backlash as well, there is ways of standing out without having to be as out there, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah,
So even like the way you send emails, right? Like everybody sells email campaigns, whatever. Everyone says, "Hey Frank, good morning, Frank." That's boring.
yeah.
Nobody, that's not going to grab anyone's attention if you're trying to pitch on something. So you got to go out there and be like, "Howdy, Frank. Hola, hola, mamacita,
What's the
whatever."
best email subject that you've seen not written yourself?
Oh,
Putting you on
oh,
the
where is it?
spot.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. My wife asked me earlier, all lower caps. That's
That's a
it.
good one. Yeah. What do you immediately want to know? What does she ask?
Yeah. Or well, my wife was thinking about you earlier.
Yeah.
That might have been the one earlier. Yeah, yeah. Because then it
Something like
makes you
that.
think, what the fuck?
Yeah. You're like quickly closing it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Making sure your girlfriend doesn't see it.
I
Oopsie
mean, and
daisy.
but again, a classic case of like great copywriting,
Mm,
great just pattern interrupt. They know that that email is going to get even if people unsubscribe, but you want that. I think to bring another topic into this, but you want people to unsubscribe. You want
mm,
people to not be following you because for everyone that does unsubscribe, that gives space for someone that wants to be there and wants to be in your circle and following you and respecting you. And like you said, not say any names. I'm going to say names. Like think about how many people hate Ty Lopez, but
oh
then
yeah.
think about how many people that absolutely love him. And I really respect the way he responds to hate because he's just like, yeah, man, that's cool. You do whatever you want to do in your life, and I'll do whatever I want to do in my life. And we'll just see like who ends up where they want to be, right?
Mm,
And love or hate him, he's done pretty damn well out of what he's done. And I think so many people just, again, it comes back. I think it probably comes back to that fear, right? It comes back to that fear of doing what they want to do or building that business that they want to build. And you've obviously done that. You've obviously built this business because you want to do it and you want to help people, and you've got that long-term vision. So if we then future pace this, like where are you going? What do you want to do? What is like your empire building plot?
really good question. I think there's two answers to this. From a personal perspective, and without sounding like Hitler, I want to start my own race. Now, this
That sounds
again,
a
it sounds
little
really.
Hitlerish.
And
Not
nobody
gonna
needs to
lie to you,
die.
man.
No, no, right. So let's kind of get into it. We know the way tech is going. We know the fact that we're obviously going to have robots, AI, all that good stuff. That's kind of the angle I want to go for. My
Army of
old,
robots, got you.
in a way, but we don't have to use the word army. We're not looking, again, this is not evil, right? We're not trying to kind of take over. I mean,
This
we
is
are
more
going to
like
take over the world.
iRobot.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's probably the personal thing
Hmm.
because it's an image way bigger than myself. We know the way tech's going. We know that, let's be realistic, robots probably are gonna take over the world. I say probably, they will. That's
One
gonna
day.
happen.
I mean,
Yeah,
we've all got an iPhone, and they pretty much already have taken over.
exactly. I mean, everybody's gonna have an Alexa in their wall in the next couple of years. Alexa, put the oven on. Alexa, to flush the toilet. Like everyone's gonna get lazy. And there's interesting dynamics around that. Like, what's gonna happen to manners? Because you're not
Hmm.
gonna say thank you and please to a robot, are you?
I'm very polite to my Alexa because she is
Same.
rude to me otherwise.
Like most girlfriends. Anywho,
My Alexa
um,
just doesn't even listen to my girlfriend. She hates it.
smart woman. I think you know what you need to do.
There we go.
So that's kind of the personal piece, if you will.
Yeah.
If you look at more at business in terms of where I'm trying to go, empire is definitely the right word. Um, the real big picture here is I want to change the world, but not in the typical cliche way of, hey, make everyone's life easier, la di da di
Hmm.
da. I want to change the world past the point of Elon Musk, where start fresh, like a whole new page, like nothing that's ever been done before, which all again just sounds super cliche if I really think about it, right? It doesn't really, yeah, it does. And that's what kind of loops me back to the whole point of start a new race. Like you want to start something like Blade Runner, like something
Hmm.
completely wildly out there. And if you start your own race, and again, it's not even my race, just a race, if you will, of bio engineers slash tech
Sure.
kind of focused people, you then look at it at such an angle that okay, we there's so many mysteries, I think, and all of this is really driven by mysteries of where did humans come from, why is X, why why have humans from 6,000 years ago knew what the solar system looked like? Like there's all these various questions that make you massively curious and inspired to kind of
Mm.
go out there and go the extra mile, and
Yeah.
all of it funnels back down to my most depressive day of, look, if I don't go for the top, if I don't completely flip the world upside down, I don't see a point to my life. I really don't.
That's it. And it's, again, that trait is so common in entrepreneurs, and Elon Musk is, I mean, one of the most perfect examples of that. If you look at Tesla, what he's done with Tesla has forced the whole electronic EV world to like wake up and think, oh, actually, no, we're doing this now. We're not doing this in 10 years, which is what the story was before, right? It was like, oh, in 10 years time, electric vehicles are going to be a thing, or whatever it is. And Elon's like, no, we're doing that now. I've done it. It's out there. People are buying it. And now like Volkswagen have just said they're going to do something like 33 billion euros just on the EV market. And so they've gone, okay, we're waking up now. We're doing this. And I love that you're like that ballsy to do that, because the only way you can do that. And if you look at Elon, I think Elon Musk is a great example of this. If you look at any interview of him, he's just like, yeah, I'm doing it. He never asks for permission, right? He never goes, what do we think this should be? He's just like, this is what I want to try. I'm going to try it. Oh, should we dig tunnels under LA? Yeah, maybe. I've done it.
Fuck it.
Yeah. What am I going to call my company? The Boring Company. Why? Because we're boring tunnels, right? And it's entrepreneurs like that will only ever create that next like generation of ideas, because without Elon Musk doing what he's done, think about how many few companies in the electronic vehicle world would be doing what they're doing. And I think you've got to create that domino effect, right? Someone's got to be that first domino to fall, to then create everything else. But to be that first domino to fall, you first got to create that line. You've got to create that anticipation of events. And I guess that's what you're doing now. That's like how your empire is going to be built, by placing those dominoes down.
I'll give you a few of my business ideas for the next 20, 30 years. There's going to be a few shocks to come. So obviously we know designer children are going to be a thing, DNA designed, physically designed, if you will. There's two angles. Exactly. There's kind of two angles I want to take with that. The first one is going to be psychologically designed children. So obviously nothing like unethical, but to be able to design a child, because from the age of 2 to 7 is when they decide their Bible, in air quotes, if you will, what's right, what's wrong, how do I process information, how do I do this, how do I do that. And I think there will be a massive market for that, especially in the future, for psychologically designed children, that in a way that it's like school but a different version. It's not just looking at basic academia, but it's looking at the core root of why are high performers. Like, I mean, if you look at entrepreneurs, they've always gone through trauma, or they've gone through pain, or they've had various events. Like Gary Vee, again, as an example, he's always said that his mum has given him massive self-esteem. That's why he has the balls and the sense of self to be able to achieve these things. He never doubts himself. So to be able to psychologically design a child in a positive way to always have self-esteem, things like that, I feel like will be a massive way to change the world. And it's not even looking as much at education center as it's looking at pure psychology. That's why I think Facebook is beyond fascinating in terms of their data centers. This is a really weird thing to think, but I just thought about it the other day so Facebook must have like 400 years of psychological knowledge that's ahead of what everybody else is at, because if they know when you're pregnant, when you're cheating, when you're hungry, think about the fact it's an algorithm that's decided that. Think about how much psychoanalysis that the algorithm must have done to know these things. They are hundreds of years ahead, just not publicly known to be, if that makes sense. So it's very interesting in that sense. So that's the first idea: psychologically designed kids in very ethical ways. We're not going to be whipping nobody, nothing like that.
No Hitler. Let's really draw that in, because if anyone transcribes this podcast, we all know the one thing that's going to be picked up is that saying. Yeah,
got to be careful there.
Good luck with your BBC News interview, by the way.
Thank you. Blonde hair, blue eyes. This is not going well for me at all.
Yeah. Anyway, business idea too.
I too. Cool. So I'm very into nootropics and biohacking. Do you know what nootropics are? Brilliant. For anybody at home that doesn't, the not nice way of putting it is just drugs for your brain.
It's basically, if you've seen the film Limitless,
amen.
It's like that, but not like that, but it is like that.
Yeah. But it's more looking at tangible things of what you can improve,
Hmm.
memory. So it's looking at the most commonly known things are stuff like lion's mane mushroom, which obviously increases BDNF, brain-derived nootropic factor,
Fuel for
which
the
is
mind.
exactly. So if you can boost your memory capacity, if you can boost your processing power, your focus, and consistently, right? So you got to look at things like tolerance. I mean, for everybody at home that loves their caffeine, any entrepreneur ever is only a real entrepreneur if they're in love with caffeine, which is a very bold statement to make, but it's very generalist and probably correct in most
I now
cases.
want to see that on a t-shirt.
Good new business idea.
There we
Boom.
go. Oh no, he's off again.
The easiest way to counteract the tolerance that caffeine gives you, right? Because after a couple of months of coffees, it just doesn't have the same effect.
Hmm.
So you got to look at things like, what's it called now? Teacrine. That's the one. So you got to mix it up with things like teacrine, which is basically just caffeine, but in different formula
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
chemical perspective. That then means that you don't trigger that tolerance, but still get the effects. It's looking at, okay, how can you boost every possible inch of your performance? I think it's probably not even that long before athletes aren't, and sports is not really in that thing. I say not long, 100 years, I reckon, give or take. Nobody's
Hmm.
going to care about sports because of technology and the fact that everybody's so brain focused rather than we're not in the caveman days of how far
Yeah.
can you throw this stick. It's now, how much information can you process. The real athletes are going to be people that focus on their mind. That's the way the world's going, especially with tech, communication, etc. So that's the angles that you want to focus on. So the next business idea is definitely going to be looking at, and this, I guess Elon Musk is kind of doing something similar in terms of looking at communication. How much information can you put into the head?
Yeah, well,
But
he's
you
got
got to look at
the chip in the brain business, doesn't he?
exactly.
Cannot
Um,
remember for the life of me what it's called.
Neuralink.
Neurolink, yeah. Also,
Boom.
possibly the best name for a business of that.
Mm,
So, like, if you look at any horror film or any thriller that stuff goes wrong, it's always called like Neurolink, and it will
mm.
have some like virtual VR thing when you walk in their offices. He's just doing it now. He's scary man. The more I think about it.
It's scary because everybody hates change. You're not
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
change.
yeah, yeah. No, 100%.
Like everybody today is like, oh, I don't want an Alexa. I mean, my one's just right there on top of my wardrobe.
But it's. I mean, you bring that up about change, and let's just rewind a little bit in terms of like the
Mm,
Facebook example. And I love it when I see people on Facebook moan about like how they think the government is going to put chips in and all this kind of stuff. And my first comment is like, do you have Facebook? Do you have a smartphone? Do you have an Alexa? Do you have a bank account? Do you shop online? Do you
mm,
have you bought anything ever off Amazon? And they're like, yeah. It's like, well then every bit of data that anyone is ever interested in, and this is the point, people assume they have really interesting lives, right? Most people
mm.
don't. But all the data that people are interested in, you've already voluntarily given it up. Because the human race is so fascinated about sharing their lives and sharing everything aspect that comes to it. And I think there's a real opportunity for the future to monetize that. I think it's already there. It's coming there. But I think Facebook definitely are going to be monetizing that in terms of what they do with that data, like you said. And for sure, they are collecting all that data because there's obviously laws at the moment. And as soon as laws get relaxed, they're going to be like, well, we already have the data. So what we're going to do with it? It's so fascinating. But Kaz, I think me and you could probably chat for the next 3 hours,
Mm.
and I would thoroughly enjoy that. But perhaps other people wouldn't. Perhaps they would. Season 2 of Founders 365 is going to be more like 2-3 hour chats. So we'll
Mm.
have to have a proper sit down and do that. But I guess let's just round this up with a nice little plug for you in terms of how people can reach out to you, how people can find you, how people can connect with you.
Absolutely. So don't bother looking at my Facebook. It's pretty boring. If you want to find me, it's going to be kasandz.com. So that's KASANDZ, D for Delta or Dick, whatever you prefer, .com. It's 2020, man. We don't judge.
No,
Everybody to
that's
their
it.
own. That's going to be the easiest way to find me, I'd say.
Amazing. Cass, listen, thank you so much for coming on Founders 365. I've loved this chat, and I think a lot of people will be having some thoughts with it as well.
A lot of psychologically designed children coming.
Yeah, exactly. But no hitlers. Thanks so much, and thanks everyone else for watching and listening. This has been Founders 365.